these things honestly fascinate me. It really makes me wish I had Smokescreen or, so help me Primus, Bumblebee, who are more traditional in Legion/Legends designs, so I could see how they feel to play with.
Why did you listen to me now? Do you know how many times I've mentioned toys in videos just so someone out there might go, oh hey, I've got that toy for sale, do you want it? Probably too many times, and it never works, ever. Except this time. Why this time? Why this toy? Yes, I'm kind of curious about Beast Hunter's upscaled Legion toys. I'm also kind of curious about what it feels like to be on fire, but we have survival instincts for these types of situations. For those who are fortunate enough not to know what these things are, here's a history lesson. Sometime during Transformers Prime, a Hasbro exec figured out that they were making toys too complicated. Really? Because 4 years before that, I was taking origami lessons just to transform Revenge of the Fallen Mixmaster. Nice to know you were paying attention. In a true example of overcorrecting, what ended up being the last wave of Prime toys were actually Cyberverse figures upscaled to Deluxe and Voyager class, with the idea that the simple transformations would let kids have an easy time playing with them. Then the fools announced that at BotCon and were met with a resounding Fans in attendance didn't care. Fans online at home were outraged just hearing about it. And while fears of this being the new norm were unfounded, it was kind of a PR disaster among the fan base. So maybe it's a good thing these things only came out in Hong Kong and the UK, and even better that they only lasted one wave, so the only ones they're offending are completionists who can't find them. Today, we're going to look at the center of all of this hostility, the fact that a line even this short actually had a Bumblebee. This one gets me in a special way, boys and girls. Prepare for rage! It's based off the Beast Hunters Deluxe I already reviewed, hence the Mad Max vibe to the design. But forget going beyond Thunderdome. This thing broke down along the way. The elephant in the room is the paint job, or lack thereof. The only actual car details painted well are the headlights and the windshield. If you like your windshield so tinted they absorb light like a black hole. None of the other windows are painted on the sides or the back. In fact, the back looks so unpainted, it's almost like a factory error. What paint is on here doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The extra mechanical details are red, so not only do they not look like mechanical details anymore, they make me think of Hot Shot when I look at the figure. I am actually debating which one is worse. Guns are silver, okay, that's right. But this black thing in the middle, that's the engine block. Apparently, Bumblebees now are so committed to the black stripe look that they will paint them over vital components if they have to. That is commitment to fashion, people. There's a real reason why it's black, and we'll get there eventually. But it still makes no sense when you have not one but two metallic colors painted on the toy already. That's really all there is to say. It's a big Legion class car. It has the playability of a cinder block. Let's skip ahead to the whole point behind upscaling a Legion class toy. The fact that you really don't have to struggle to get it transformed. They even boast about it all over the box. Transforms in 4 steps. In many languages I cannot pronounce.
So let's try this out. Here's step 1. Step 1. Jeez, I am not exaggerating that. It's locked like a bank vault. Jeez. Kids are still going to ask their parents to help them transform it. There's no way they can handle that. Well, that's one step. So, there's 2. There's 3, and yeah, we're being fair here. We're counting mirrored movements as one step. And there's 4. Clearly, this will require another step. Hasbro lied. Toy ruined.
The irony here is I've been advocating simpler transformations for years. They stopped being fun right around the time Michael Bay decided that Transformers need to look like walking junkyard piles. I mean, it's not my fault, is it? Because if I am somehow to blame for these things, I will regret ever picking up a camcorder. The robot mode is obviously influenced by the Murder Bee toy I already reviewed. Same rhino horn and spiky bits, but simplified way down. By way down, I mean only being the slightest vestige of the original toy. The head mold is mostly intact. It's trying to do the scary eyebrow thing, but it really loses its punch with the blue eyes. He still looks like he wants to kill me, but first, wants a snuggle. The molding details are sharper here, but still molded exactly like the original toy. Down to the very last detail, it's the same. Well, not quite. I did spot one difference in the molding. They did remold this area under the front of his chest. And it's the kind of molding that makes me notice the difference between sculpted detail and just making hollowed plastic look neat. Just look at the inside of the arms and legs on this thing. Do you think they went a little overboard? He looks like his corpse was rated for parts. For playability, all you get is a new sword weapon, which I guess looks good outside of being shaped like scrap metal with a handle. Reminds me of the Soul Edge from Soul Calibur. But what's the point of a sword weapon with no knees, wrist, or elbow joints to make good sword poses? I mean, a gun, sure, you hold it 90 degrees and it looks correct. You hold a sword 90 degrees for the sword fight and I guarantee you, that hand is going to be the first thing you'll lose in the duel. As for using it in vehicle mode, don't bother. The sword's too short for the point to reach anyone. You could use the handle, which going off the side looks like Bee's taking out people's ankles, and on the top, he's either killing low-flying birds or trying to get back to 1985. Now, typically a toy this limited has some big, overblown gimmick that all the toy is consumed by, and it would suddenly spring out and do something really neat. And right about now, I would love for some giant bazooka to pop out of this toy's backside. I'm sorry, that was supposed to be one of those like standard review setups where I say something I wish would happen and it suddenly does, and it's, ooh, that's nice. Yes, I know it's a long shot. At this point, I need the toy to do anything. Again, what annoys me, because it's one of the very few things this toy has, is the paint deco. Big, broad blots of paint with little to no care for small details of the toy. And when you get down to it, really not much paint on him. Only the face and legs are new in robot mode. Unless you look carefully, and then you start to figure out what's going on here. The midsection of the robot mode is the same chunk of parts that makes up the front windshield, most of the roof, and the engine of the car hood. All black parts, right? Except they're painted black. The parts are actually cast in yellow plastic, just like the original Legion toy. That's how slavish they were being to the original Legion toy. Like they literally blew up the original mold and shipped it off to the factory that way. We know it takes more than one mold to produce a deluxe toy, so they easily could have cast that part in black. Especially when you realize there's already black parts on the toy. This is why the engine is randomly black. Half of the paint on this thing is just in the middle piece, a piece that didn't have to be black. Now understand what we're dealing with here. This is a toy that not only wastes paint, but it also barely paints anything. The fact that this toy can be both wasteful and cheap is so far the most impressive, only impressive thing about it. I keep coming back to the same thought. Where did the cost cutting go on this toy? Simple paint, hollowed plastic, no new engineering. All of it had to go somewhere, right? Well, obviously, it went to the size of the toy. I mean, have you ever seen the upscaled Voyagers? Holy crap! For 20 bucks, that's enormous. That kind of upscaling, I can get behind. So obviously the size of the toy was where all the cost for this figure went. I mean, for only 15 bucks to get a much larger deluxe Bumblebee is actually kind of cool when you think, you know where I'm going with this, don't you? Shock of shocks, it's no bigger than the original deluxe. At best, it's bulkier due to the larger components. Right? Because I crunched the numbers, and trust me, I am not happy about breaking out the high school math just for a Bumblebee. Upscale B is about 12.5% lighter than Beast Hunter's Bumblebee. Doesn't seem like much, but on a mass production scale, that's enormous. That means for every 8 Hunter Bees they made, they could have made 9 of these upscales for the same cost. A ninth of the production run would have basically been free. I say it again. Where did the money go on this thing? I mean, am I wrong to expect some kind of improvements over the Legion class toy? Because I don't think I am. I mean, especially when you consider that's exactly what they said! When they revealed these at BotCon 2013, the statement was they were focusing on making toys simpler to play with and investing the savings into larger toys and better decos. Remind me what part of Dunk the Biggest Part in Black equals better deco? Didn't cover that in high school math. The more and more I look at the shortcomings of this, the worse my conclusion gets. And I might come across kinda conspiracy theorist about this, but my voice must be heard. You must know the truth. They are lying to you. They are all lying to you. The mold pattern of the toy is identical to the original Legion class figure. The paint is simple, like what a Legion class repaint would get. No added gimmick and only one accessory. No added articulation. And even though it's the same size as a Beast Hunter's Deluxe, it's much lighter. And remember, they molded out even more plastic than before. And this is a fair comparison, by the way. Both toys already had their engineering costs handled already. They just had to modify it a little bit. Spiky bits for the Beast Hunters, new universal joints for the upscales. In either case, they still require a brand new steel mold, which is where most of the cost goes. So they pretty much cost the same thing. Except the upscale, way cheaper to make because there's way fewer parts to it. Nothing about this tells me made for kids. They did that as fast action battlers. They were simple, but some weren't bad little toys. And they were certainly better than this. More importantly, this was marketed as a mainline release, on the same peg as the far superior previous Bumblebee, and given how well Bumblebees sell, probably on the peg at the same time. They wanted you to pay the same 15 bucks for this as the far better deluxes it shared the peg with. I mean, everything about this screams, make it as cheap as possible, and isn't it convenient that there's only one wave of these known about, let alone produced? Especially when there's so many better toys for the upsizing like Ironhide or Hardshell, or how about Poor Breakdown, who didn't get any larger toy in the US at all, or Arachnid, whose Legion toy is way better than the deluxe with her panel arms, useless hips, and complete lack of decoration. I have to review that now too, don't I? Point is, usually the tail end of a line comes with cancellations. But if you were a toy company and you got burned like that at the end of every toy line, wouldn't you find some way of making that hit as light as possible? Especially when your previous line had to cancel 2 completely new molds of a character featured in your summer blockbuster? That's quite the hit and causes a lot of discord amongst your audience. So you make the last wave of deluxes a complete throwaway. Who cares if those hunks of junk get canceled? And you do what any good businessman does, you upsell the positives. Sure, it does nothing that a toy a third its price doesn't do, but it's easier for kids to transform than normal deluxes, so market it that way and never address the shortcomings. This is a toy made by a bean counter, not a toy designer. And when you tell me to spend 3 times as much for a toy and get no new play value or experience for it, and then you tell me that's a good thing, that's borderline insulting. Not just to me as a collector, but to the kids you were trying to market these to. It's insulting to their intelligence to think they need the toys dumbed down to this degree. If I've learned anything from playing with this toy, it's the price of greed. No matter what you sell, if you're just looking to get as much out of your audience as you can, it's going to show in the product. And it certainly shows here. I completely believe this toy had nothing to do with being simple for kids and everything to do with getting as much out of you for as little work as they could possibly get away with. It honestly makes me ashamed that I would cheapen my own product just because I was looking for a few certain toys. I promise you guys, I am never pandering for handouts ever again. After all, I am the plastic addict. I'm here to punish painful plastic, not cheapen my product like an upscaled Legion toy. Now, if you will excuse me, I have to go check eBay for a Henkei Dinobot. And an X9 Ravage.